Hello again and welcome. Michael Pizzolla here. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the ValueCapping Rant. This is the 2023 Kentucky Derby edition. And first and foremost, I am so happy that you could join me on this video. Allow me to share with you my thoughts about strategy, about racing, about value capping, and about this year's Kentucky Derby. I'm going to do things a little differently this year. I do listen to your messages and your emails and so forth, and many of them say, Michael, get to the point. So, okay, I'm going to give you my conclusion first. Also, Michael, you always say you're passing these races. Don't you play any races? Yeah, I'll show you a couple of races I played. And then I'm going to take the race apart. I'm going to look at the pace of the Derby, this year's Derby, from an historical perspective, from the Derbies going back from 2012, and look to see what horses may have that a running style, a energy distribution that kind of matches that. And we'll come back full circle to where we started. And where are we starting? Well, I use a software program called ValueCapper. I know the fellow who designed it. Very smart guy. Kidding. Of course, it was me. And big surprise, Forte, or Fort if you want to win some bar bets, but let's go with Forte. Forte's on top with a gap. Wow, Michael, that's genius. And Tap It Trice is second on the line. Got a couple of other interesting horses not too far behind, the 6 Kings Barnes and the 7 Reincarnate. Now, you really didn't need me to tell you that Forte is a champion, 6 out of 7 wins and so forth. Also, Forte and Tap It Trice are the 2 morning line favorites. So, gee, that's wonderful, Michael. Look at what you've done with your wonderful software and all your knowledge. Yeah, well, that's what happens sometimes. I'm going to be looking at prices on Kings Barnes and Reincarnate. As a primary bet, look, this is a mess. There are, 16 horses above random, and it's not the kind of race that I would generally bet. However, it's a big day. It's the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to see if there are some prices. There might be on the 6 and the 7. So these are secondary bets, recreational bets, if you will. Be careful with these, because if you make a habit of these, okay, Triple Crown races, Breeders' Cup, sure. But then they creep in, and it's kind of like someone who has an addiction and they can't just do one. Okay, so you have to know yourself about that. So, my conclusion for those of you who don't want the details, Forte looks strong, Tap It Trice second on the line. I'm going to be focusing at Reincarnate. And then maybe if Kings Barnes is also over 20 to 1, I would take a little bet on that. So, for those of you who just tuned in to see my conclusions, there they are. And by the way, you can go and look. There's 100 other videos on, well, I think this horse is strong. Now, I'm going to show you specifically why now, for those of you who are going to hang around. First of all, those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Pizzolla. I've been teaching this game, writing about this game, theorizing about this game for over 35 years. I am the author of the best-selling handicapping book, Handicapping Magic, co-author of the classic Pace Makes the Race. I am the creator of the original online racing forum in its current iteration. It's called Post Time Daily. You can find it at posttimedaily.com. I am the creator of the ValueCapper software, which I'll be using in this video. You can get a free video course on my thinking about value capping at ValueCapper.com. 4 videos. If you're not interested in software, don't watch the last video. I don't care. The first video about the theory and why value capping is essential to the modern game, I think will stand you in good stead. What do you mean value capping? The premises, the framework of value capping is to bet horses you like that the public shouldn't. In other words, you should know why you're getting a price. Preferably, those horses will be running against vulnerable favorites. You wait for your price, and you let the bet make you. So, some points really quickly before we get into the details. This is not a touting video. I don't pick horses. I'm looking for a value bet, a value investment. And I want to take this opportunity, because everyone's interested in the Derby, to demonstrate the principles of value capping. Second, I'm making this video. I did my analysis on the Tuesday of Derby week. I'm talking to you on the Wednesday of Derby week. And I don't have scratches or weather changes. And I have 3 also eligibles listed. Now, usually it doesn't make much of a difference, but it might be significant in this year's Derby. I took a quick look at the weather forecast from AccuWeather. I believe this was AccuWeather. There is some indication there might be some thunder showers on Friday for the Oaks, Saturday for the Derby. We'll have to see. Software numbers, good numbers, bad numbers, sophisticated numbers, crude numbers. They're tools. They're not crystal balls. A good tool in the hand of an unskilled person is not going to be good. You give someone the finest golf clubs in the world, if they don't have a good swing, they're not going to be able to play good golf. On the other hand, you give a pro some terrible looking clubs and all, he or she will play pretty well. Potential value bets are price dependent. You're not going to see me sit here and say, this horse is a lock and I don't see how it could lose. And no, we can't predict, well, anything, but specifically the horse races with certainty. So they're price dependent. If there's no price, no adequate price, there's no bet. Simple as that. I'm looking for a good value investment. And by the way, handicapping is not. I'm going to handicap the race, and then I'll find who the best horse is going to win, and then I'm going to look up and get a good price on it. That's value capping. No, it isn't. Think about it. I got a horse who's good form, good speed. He's properly placed in class. He's being adequately handled by his trainer and so forth and so on. And then I want 10 to 1 on the horse. Well, why are you the lucky one? You look around a poker table, and in 5 minutes, if you don't know who the sucker is, you're it, as the old saying goes. So in the same way, you want to find horses that won't look obvious to the public. Okay? Horses you like, the public shouldn't. Okay. So I got, and it struck me because I got 3 messages that all said the same thing. Michael, on these big race videos, there's a lot of messy races. You keep saying most of them aren't primary bets. And I was asked, you pass a lot of races. What kind of races do you invest in? Now, I don't usually do this. But I'm going to show you some things that I share with my private coaching people on the Wizards Forum. I like simple, clear, and obvious plays. I like simple, clear, and obvious overlays and simple, clear, and obvious races. The reason I don't share these is that I don't want people thinking, oh, look at this great program. All I have to do is open it up and boom, there's a $50 horse. No, because hear me, for each of these I could show you a dozen of the same situation where it didn't work out or the horse ran up the track or finished second. And that's why I don't do this often. Okay, this first one was a quiet Tuesday here in Las Vegas, March 7th, 2023. I've got 5 horses above random, as opposed to the Derby where I've got like 17. One horse stuck out, goes Stellaire. It's a value investment potential. 6 to 1 is the line I made, horse I like. 14 to 1 is what I think the public would do, that the public shouldn't. Morning line confirms that at 15 to 1. Go Stellaire won like a champ and paid $56.80. Well, yeah, Michael, anyone could go back over the results and figure out a way. Well, I happen to bet this, okay, and and my private coaching, my wizards on the Wizards Forum will know that I always keep receipts. Easy to say, oh, yeah, I would have, and just had it. And this little bet. I mean, for those of you who are big bettors, this will be a little bet. For those of you who are $2 bettors, this will seem like a large bet. I don't know. Here's the ticket. A $30 win bet came back 852. $1 exacta box with everything came out 164. It was very inartful. That's basically a small win bet with a place bet. Another Tuesday, Quiet Tuesday, Parks Race 2. This is the kind of bread and butter race. A $12,000 claim in non-winners 3. 4 horses above random. Not 17 like are in the Derby. Manuela, a horse I like, 6-1. That the public shouldn't, 20-1. Confirmed by the morning line. Going off at a big price. Manuela just barely won, but that's okay. Paid 65.20. Got lucky with the exacta a little bit. The win bet came back 978, and the exacta was very nice for $1. Paid 363. My point is, the Derby is a messy race, and that's why I sit here and I tell you, it's too messy. There's too much going on. It's not going to be a primary bet. So, and I understand that those of you who haven't studied and aren't into value capping or have ValueCapper or Black Magic software and all, that it may seem amorphous. That's why I wanted to show you those examples of the simple races that I find investments in. And again, not a magic program, not a crystal ball, but here you go. It's the tool I use. Now, having said that, let's take a closer look at the Derby. So here's the pace analysis, and we'll look at historical first. These are the races, the Derbies run since 2012 on a fast track. So from the bottom up, we see I'll Have Another, California Chrome, American Pharaoh, Nyquist Authentic, Medina Spirit, okay, got DQ'd, and Rich Strike last year at 80-1, 81-1 is kind of unusual. If you wonder, oh, well, you got Medina Spirit in there. Those were Medina Spirit's lines. If you want to look at Mandaloun, Mandaloun ran an energy expenditure of 51.01, which, as you will see, is right in line with the winners. Okay, so Medina Spirit is one of the top box there, 51.2. Okay, and take Rich Strike out of the equation, even though 50.9 is not that far off. Look at how consistent 51.2, 51.83, 52.23 was a Breeders' Cup race, not the Kentucky Derby. 51.7, 51.8, 51.9, 51.77. That's remarkably consistent over these years. If the track is off, if it's sloppy, no surprise, it will go a little earlier. 51.5 on Maximum Security in 19, Justify in 18, and Orb came from way back on a sloppy track. Wet Fast, still don't know what that means. Always Dreaming in 2017, so that's a little earlier. So 51 and change for a fast track at Churchill, mile and a quarter. If it's an off track, look for a little earlier horse. Okay. 8 of the last 11 Derby winners, 2 lengths or less behind at the second call. 9 out of the 11, 2.6 lengths or less at the second call. So it calls for a pressing running style. Now, how can you say that? Well, look at Rich Strike. It came from way beyond. Yeah, okay. Those things happen. The pace collapses sometimes. So that's historical, right? A 51 and change energy distribution, kind of close up at the second call or within 2-3 lengths. But that's history. How about the 2023 Derby? Well, ValueCapper uses something that very smart guy designed called acupressure, which looks at every race in every horse's past performances and does a very sophisticated pace analysis using adjusted numbers. So here is the scenario. Now, I've got to make this point about the also eligibles, and I'll come back to this. Here's the scenario with the also eligibles in. We see Mage and Reincarnate in the first call. This kind of makes some sense to me. Confidence Game, Verifying, and Cyclone Mischief may be in that mix at the first call. Now, Cyclone Mischief is one of those also eligibles. Moving to the second call, Reincarnate makes a nice move, again, according to projections. Now, who knows what's going to happen? 20 colts, they'll be, bumping if the 20, well, the horse from the extreme outside's got to get over. And this is nice theoretical on paper. The race comes up as unknown. In other words, there's just none of this. A bunch of horses the first call, a bunch of horses the second call. There's a little space. There are 5 or 6 closers, including Forte and Tapit Trice, and of course Lord Miles, who won the Wood at 60 to 1, Angel of Empire, and so forth. Now, the scenario I just showed you includes the also eligibles. So the race, the value capper line, and the one I showed you at the very top, for those of you who are still here, and it's a neutral biased race. You see Forte on top with a gap. There's also some clues here. These are value capper notes at the bottom of the screen. The Fulcrum is the 10 practical move. Those of you who don't know what a Fulcrum is, I did a video called Stop Betting Slow Horses, and I'll put a link, if I remember, in the description. And if you don't, you can just search for Stop Betting Slow Horses, Michael Pizzolla. King's Barnes is the target, meaning that it's got the best last race master pace number. Those are the numbers that are the kind of the put together number, pace number, not any specific fraction. Of course, the morning line favorite is the 15 Forte. So this is the value capper line with the also eligibles. Notice the contrast between this and those other simple races that I showed you. So I look at this, I get a headache, and I think, oh, pass the race. This is the 12th race of Churchill. There are a bunch of races. But everyone wants to know, well, Michael, what do you think about the Derby? I said, oh, gosh, here we go. All right, here we go. Now, clever boy that I am, I scratched the also eligibles. So I'm saying they won't draw in. Of course, Cyclone Mischief has to be the 21, the first one that would draw in, I believe. That's the way it works. If one of the horses scratches, But anyway, I scratched all 3 also eligibles, and guess what? The race comes up unpressured now. And Value Capper said, let's take a look at an early bias. Reincarnate's still there. In fact, Reincarnate's on top in that scenario, with Forte right behind it and Tapit Trice right behind that. We also get at a little cluster there, in that same cluster, Confidence Game, Angel of Empire. And King's Barnes is still hanging out there. Those same 3 horses that you saw in the other scenario were there. Reincarnate may be a little stronger because Cyclone Mischief doesn't draw in, may not have as much pressure. Now, I want to go a little more deeply into this. So this is what acupressure looks like without the also eligibles in there. Reincarnate and Mage. Again, we still have Confidence Game and verifying at the first call. Reincarnate trying to make that second move. Can he hold on a mile and a quarter? I have no idea, but we're going to look. I used to do everything old school before there were computers, believe it or not, that old. And I won't do this in every race, every day, because simply I have this other thing going on called a life. It takes an enormous amount of work, especially for a race as complicated as the Kentucky Derby, these lightly raced colts, 20 of them. So I let the software do the heavy lifting. That's one of the outcomes I had for the software because of my own work. I mean, I do this. Is it as accurate and as good, and do you have as much confidence? Is that what you do by eye and sensing and intuition and all of that? Maybe not in some races, but think about the time. But in any event, when I looked by eye, it looked to me that the 4 California Game and the 7 Reincarnate could put down a 47-1 on the lead. Okay, fine. They may get pushed by the 2, verifying, the 6, King's Barnes, and the Fulcrum, the 10, practical move. Okay, so this is what it looked like by eye in the first call. Now, if that pressure is there, if those 47-1s, for example, that Reincarnate can run, they get pushed by a practical move in the 2 and the 4, he may have to go a little faster, maybe somewhere around a 46-3. That's what I would look for in the first call pace. In the second call, Reincarnator's run a 111-3 on the lead, but here's the rub. So has Cyclone Mischief. 111 on the lead, 111-4 on the lead. So it makes sense to me now why scratching the also eligibles led ValueCapper to make the race unpressured now. Because with Cyclone Mischief out of there, it may not provide that pressure. And I'm sorry to be spending so much time on an also eligible who probably won't run, but this is a key component to the pace. This is a lot different analysis than just like, well, I think this is coming in the Pletcher barn where he's got 3-4 colts entered, and I think he's got a real shot with one of them. I would take... No. Don't do that. This is data-driven. This is numbers-driven. And I want you to see some of the nuances. So the 10 practical move, the Fulcrum in the race, has pressed in a 111-2, may push the pace to that. Okay, I Reincarnate can handle it. Some of the other horses can handle it. Again, the notation that practical move is the Fulcrum. I was getting a little nervous when the Fulcrum is way down in numbers. Fulcrum comes in at 111-2. Technically 111.3, which for your old timers is 111 and 1.5 Okay, so by the way, us old timers. The reason is that the Fulcrum is done unadjusted. So when you adjust all these numbers, you get a slightly different look at the pace and everything else. And that's why if you just look, practical move isn't to be found. Do I think it will run? Don't know. The Fulcrum runs pretty well. Don't know why, and I came up with the concept. Shows up first or second often. So there's one of the questions I have in the race. Again, the scenarios with the also eligibles, don't really know. Without the also eligibles, Reincarnate. And this is very much in line with how I looked at it by eye. And again, the difference is because acupressure uses adjusted numbers. Now look, let's look at some of the other horses, but you don't need me or a computer program to tell you that Forte and Tapitrice are obvious colts in this race. I mean, come on. The question is, can we find value elsewhere? And by value elsewhere, I don't mean, well, there's got to be a price somewhere. No. Is there a colt or colts that have some things going for them that may not be obvious to the public? Okay, let's look at Forte, please. If we're thinking the pace is 46-3, 111-2, 111-3, somewhere in there, if you look at his races in the Breeders' Futurity and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year and the Fountain of Youth this year, he just closed from 4th or 5th to win those races. In the Florida Derby, he saw a faster pace, certainly in the second call. First call was 46-4. Second call was 10-3, faster, and had to close from a little further behind. Was that because of the pace? Was that because of the traffic? I don't know. He is a little bit late compared to what the other winners of the Derby for the past few years are doing. In other words, I see him at a 50.8, second back 50.2. The top race in the Florida Derby, that 51.57 is spot on. Numbers aren't through the roof. That the Florida Derby comes up, according to my numbers, as a rather slow race. So, is this the best colt in the race? Yeah. 6 out of 7 lifetime. Finished 4th in the Sanford as the only blemish. This is the closer, short closer in the race. Seems to like to come from 3, 4, 5 lengths at the second call and then close. You have to deal with Forte in the race. Is it a lock? Well, I don't know. That Florida Derby now, did he regress and go backward in the numbers? Do I have a poor number on the Florida Derby? Don't think so. Can it handle the pace? Sure. So, okay, so we got Fort, and again, on the neutral scenario, on top of ValueCapper with the gap, as you would expect. Tapit Trice when he ran against a 111. This little dappled uh, colt came from way back, from the ninth position at the second call to win. It was really a good move. He won with a shorter close in the bluegrass against a much slower pace, 48, 12, and 3. Even in the Tampa Bay Derby, 47, then 111-2, which is closer to what the second call projects to be in the Derby, had to come from way back. If you notice, out of his 5 races, but by the way, he won 4 of them, so another champion, even though, okay, so a couple of times to break his maiden, easy allowance win, Tampa Bay Derby grade 3, Bluegrass grade 1. This is a champion horse, okay, and a potential champion. Look at its energy percentage, 50.29, 50.88, 50.42. A little bit late for Derby-ish, but certainly a contender to run. Now, let's get into some interesting, the 3rd and 4th horses on the line. Kingsbarns, another Todd Pletcher runner, didn't run as a 2-year-old. 3 for 3 as a 3-year-old, didn't run as a 2-year-old. I will note that Justified didn't run as a 2-year-old either, and the Triple Crown races worked out pretty well for him. Never run against a 111 and change. Okay, so you look at the second calls for the races that Kingsbarns has run, 12-2, 12-2, 14-3. So you would think, well, gosh, Louisiana Derby, which is the one graded race that this colt ran, I mean, it went through what champions do. They break their maiden first asking. Secretariat didn't. Long story, I was there. The allowance race, easy win. And then the Louisiana Derby is a 49-3 and 114-3 at a very slow pace, and he got away with it. Well, look over at the master pace numbers. 165.5 on that Louisiana Derby is the highest number last race of all of these contenders, confirmed number. So it's not as slow as it looks, and in fact, the master pace numbers puts it almost exactly the same number as the number that he ran in the allowance win on February 12th at Tampa. And as far as distribution, I don't know. It's maiden win from off the pace, 52.24, a little early. It's allowance win on the lead at the second call, close from the first call, perfect, 51.87 for the Derby. And in the Louisiana Derby, it had the lead, but it ran a late expenditure. So what do you do with this? Don't know what it's going to do. 3 hasn't done anything wrong. Can it run against a 111-2? Nobody knows. We'll know if the pace comes up that fast. But he's done everything asked of him. He's 3 for 3 lifetime. It's not surprising the ValueCapper put him there on the line. Here's an interesting horse to me, Reincarnate. I highlighted the 111-2, 111-3 that he ran against in the slop in the Rebel at Oaklawn. Against that 111-2, finished 3rd by 2.5. Broke its maiden against a 111-3. Here's the interesting thing to me. Let's take the sham out of it at Santa Anita earlier this year, where the second call was 109-3. Don't think he'll be seeing that pace today, even though he won that race. Take that out and look at the energy expenditures. 51.3, 51.9, 51.9, 51.5. That's good for the Derby. Now, is it fast enough? Remember, I'm looking at a 156 and change from Kingsbarns. Well, in that sham race, around 158.6 helped. That number is helped, no doubt, by that 109 in the middle. The other numbers are okay, not overwhelming. So this is a horse that the public isn't. I don't think the public will see. The morning line maker made it 50-1. Interesting. And 4th on my line. So after all of that analysis, after taking the pace apart, doing it by eye, doing it by computer, guess what? Here's the value capper line with the also eligibles in Forte, Tap, Trice, King's Barnes, Reincarnate. After that, Angel of Empire, which I can see, Verifying Confidence Games, so forth. With the also eligibles out, it's an unpressured race. Same 3 horses. Reincarnate, Forte, Tap, Trice. King's Barnes is still in there tied. Confidence Game, Angel of Empire, King's Barnes, still there. Mage, kinda. But you see what I mean? After all of that analysis, there we have it. It's still a messy race with many questions. Let me give you some of the questions. Derma Sotogake, the 17, is the Emirates Derby winner. Ran a beautiful race. What are those numbers? I don't know. No internal fractions recorded. And I go by internal fractions and incremental velocity. How about the 10, the Fulcrum? Why is it way down in the line? Well, it's because of the adjustments in the numbers. Still, makes me nervous when a Fulcrum is way out of it like that. How about the 14, Angel of Empire? 2 very nice closing wins, the Arkansas Derby and the Risen Star. The NSF means it never run against the pace this fast, but it's certainly a very good colt. Where's Mage? And the reason I ask where's Mage, I've got him at the bottom of my arc, or near the bottom of the arc, but he only lost by a length to Forte. So these things, questions. So for these reasons and questions, it's not a primary bet for me. It's a secondary bet. And just to make it clear, I intend to have a secondary win bet on the 7, Reincarnate. 20-1 and up. If they let King's Barnes go 20-1, also I'll have a smaller bet on King's Barnes. And I'll use exotics with those 2, with the 5 Forte, the 15 Forte and the 5 Tap at Trice. And that's my bet. I'm not going to go overboard because, a lot of moving parts here. I would urge you on big days like this, good value opportunities often appear in the undercards. So take a look at them. I didn't see very much in the Churchill undercards, but there are other tracks running on Derby Day, and the crowd can get so involved with the Derby and the races before the Derby and all of that, they forget to look at these, looking for the races like the ones I showed you, the very simple, clear, and obvious races. So to recap, still a pass race for me as far as primary bets. Secondary bet, Reincarnate at 20-1. A smaller bet on King's Barnes if he also goes off at 20-1 and up, using 15 Forte and the 5 Tap at Trice. In exotics, there's a value capper. Gosh, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got some value out of that. I so much appreciate you spending this time with me. The kids tell me that I have to remind you, if you liked this video, to hit something. The like button, subscribe. I don't know. You ask me if I really care. No, but I care that you found this worthwhile, this going through this this analysis. I know I go into depth on these, but I want to demonstrate to you how I would take a race apart. Now again, software does most of it for me, and I have confidence in the software because I put all the parts together. Again, the Derby is a messy race, and I appreciate you taking this time and allowing me to share my thoughts about this great game and this great race with you. So, until next time, good luck at the Derby, good luck at the races, stay calm, stay focused, enjoy, and let the bet make you. I'll see you soon.